Late summer at Center Hill Lake should be alive with the roar of boats, the echo of music, and the carefree freedom of a holiday weekend, especially during Wakefest, the annual 3-day wakeboarding event that draws hundreds of people every July. But on July 26, 2015, what began as a festive outing ended in a moment of shocking discovery that would shatter one family forever. It was a Sunday afternoon on the vast waters of Center Hill Lake near Pates Ford Marina in DeKalb County, Tennessee, roughly 2 hours from Nashville. Around 4:40 p.m., a local fisherman and his son were out on the water, unaware that they were about to stumble upon something that no one expected. As they navigated a quiet cove, something unusual caught their eye. At first indistinct but unmistakably out of place on the surface of the lake. At first, they saw what looked like a piece of clothing, but as they drew closer, it became clear that it was a body, face down, silent, and floating in the still water. The fishermen called authorities, and the grim reality began to spread through law enforcement and a community that had been celebrating just hours before. Later that day, officials would confirm that the body belonged to 21-year-old Lauren Agee, a college student from Hendersonville, Tennessee, full of dreams and laughter, whose life had come to a haunting end far from home. What made the discovery even more disturbing was not just the lifeless form in the water, but the questions that immediately followed. How did she get there? Why had no one called for help earlier in the day? And how could a young woman reportedly enjoying a weekend with friends end up unnoticed for more than 12 hours before her body was found? In the long shadows of the summer afternoon, the serene lake that had been filled with music and laughter became the scene of a tragedy that would challenge official conclusions, ignite suspicion, and leave a family searching for truth. This is where the story begins. Not just with a discovery in still water, but with a question that remained unanswered. What really happened to Lauren Agee? Lauren Agee was described by everyone who knew her as bright, loving, and ambitious. She was a criminal justice major at Bethel University with dreams of helping victims and making the world a safer place. Friends called her warm, funny, and unforgettable, the kind of presence that lit up every room she entered. But to truly understand the tragedy of her death, you must first understand the life she lived and the world she was part of before she ever arrived at Center Hill Lake that summer. Lauren was born on August 19, 1993 in Biloxi, Mississippi, and grew up with her family in Hendersonville, Tennessee. She was part of a tight-knit family that included her mother, Cher Smith, stepfather, Michael Smith, and 3 siblings, Allison, Jordan, and Joshua. From an early age, Lauren showed a blend of athleticism and artistic flair. She spent 4 years dancing for the Hendersonville High School Golden Girls dance team, earning accolades and recognition for her talent. Her skills in dance earned her a scholarship offer to Bethel University, a testament to her dedication and passion for movement. But Lauren made a conscious choice to pursue a different path. Instead of dedicating her life to performance, she transferred to Volunteer State Community College, V-State, in Gallatin, where she was studying criminal justice, a field she chose not out of obligation, but out of a deeply held desire to help others. Those close to her said she dreamed of working with victims, perhaps one day giving voice to those who had none. Lauren was also known for her vibrant social life. She had a close circle of friends, and even at 21, she had already captured hearts in her community with her easy laughter, quick wit, and spirited curiosity about life. She wasn't just academically inclined, she loved animals and spent time with those who mattered most to her. Her mother, Sherry, said in interviews after her death that Lauren was so happy in life. She was doing well in school, living at home, and believed she had met the one. Her plans for the future were not vague dreams. They were active goals shared with people who knew her best. Lauren's life was full of promise, laughter, and expectations for a future filled with purpose. She was not merely a name in a news report. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend with real ambitions and relationships. And just as the morning after Wakefest began and ended in tragedy, Lauren's story, full of light and potential, would not end where it should have. It began on July 24th, 2015, when Lauren and childhood friend Hannah Palmer set out for Wakefest, a 3-day wakeboarding event at Center Hill Lake in DeKalb County, Tennessee. An annual gathering known as much for parties and late nights as for water sports and cheering crowds. Wakefest draws hundreds of spectators and competitors alike each summer. Professional wakeboarders perform by day, while by night, the marina transforms into a social hub of drinking, music, and revelry. And many attendees camp out on houseboats or in cabins clustered along the lakeshore. Lauren had posted photos and videos of the drive there with Hannah, buzzing with excitement on their way to join the festivities. What she didn't tell her family was that once she arrived, plans would change dramatically. Waiting for them were Hannah's boyfriend, Aaron Lilly, and Aaron's friend, Christopher Stout, someone Lauren had never met before that weekend. Together, the four of them spent the afternoon eating, drinking, laughing, and watching wakeboarding competitors slice through the sun-dappled waves. Another friend from high school, Cassie Franks, saw Lauren on the docks that day. She later recalled that Lauren was clearly under the influence of alcohol, having a good time, full of energy. Yet behind the festivities, there was unease. Lauren's mother, Sherry Smith, had told news reporters that she didn't feel comfortable with the group Lauren was going with, especially given the alcohol-soaked reputation of Wakefest and Hannah's relatively new friendship with Lauren. During the afternoon, modest cliff jumping between parties was part of the festival's thrill culture. One witness reported that Lauren jumped from a cliff and struck the back of her head on a rock, leaving her dazed for a short time before she continued drinking and socializing. That night, around 2 a.m., off-duty police officer Chris Yarrick, who was working as a security guard at Wakefest, saw Lauren, still vivacious and lively with her friends inside a bar near the marina. They left together, walking down the dock toward the water, and took a small boat across the lake to their campsite, a remote, unofficial spot on a rocky outcropping across from Pates Ford Marina. The campsite was nothing like the cabin Lauren had told her mother she would be staying in that weekend. Instead, it was perched on a narrow bluff, reachable only by boat, and famous among locals for its ruggedness. One side had a 35-foot slope, and the opposite side plunged approximately 90 feet into the water below. Hannah Palmer and Aaron Lilly set up a tent, while Lauren and Christopher Stout were assigned a hammock suspended near the edge of the cliff. Photos from that night show the two of them lounging together in the hammocks, the last known images taken of Lauren alive. Some witnesses later described that Lauren seemed uncomfortable with the sleeping arrangements once she saw how close to danger they were. She asked a high school friend if she could sleep with her group instead, but there was no room. By shortly before 2:30 a.m., the foursome were at the campsite, the sounds of the festival fading behind them as they drifted off into the early morning hours. What happened next? In that fragile stretch between night and dawn is a moment now frozen in time. That night, the group partied. They drank alcohol, returning around 2 a.m. to what should have been a safe night's rest. But nothing about this weekend would prove ordinary. The reality of that late night, the final hours Lauren Agee spent alive, is layered with human detail, witness accounts, and unsettling questions that still echo today. Morning dawned, but Lauren did not. Her friends woke to find her gone with her cell phone, flip-flops, and belongings still at the campsite. This simple and haunting detail, all her personal items left untouched, would become one of the most troubling aspects of the case. When Hannah Palmer first woke that Sunday morning, she went straight to the hammock where Lauren and Christopher Stout had slept, but Lauren was not there. Stout was alone, still in the hammock, and could offer little clarity. He told Hannah that Lauren had gotten up sometime during the night, but that he didn't know when or where she'd gone. Hannah then began looking around the campsite, but the scene only deepened the mystery. Lauren's purse, her cell phone, her flip-flops, things she would almost certainly have taken with her if she planned to hike, walk home, or even visit another part of Wakefest, were all left exactly where she had placed them the night before. Hannah later insisted to investigators that Lauren would not leave without that stuff, yet she still made no call to authorities. Instead, the group assumed that Lauren might have gone off on her own, perhaps to explore the festival early or to meet someone else, and that she would return soon. Hours passed with no attempt to contact police, no 911 call, and no concerted search party formed. Meanwhile, back home, Lauren's mother, Cher Smith, was growing anxious. Sherry had tried repeatedly to reach her daughter that morning with phone calls and text messages, but Lauren did not answer. By midday, Sherry's worry had become fear. She reached out to friends and other loved ones, desperately trying to piece together what had happened during Lauren's night at Wakefest. Sherry would later recall the dread that settled in her chest as the morning unfolded, a feeling that something was very wrong. Lauren always kept her phone nearby and never left without her belongings. The fact that none of these were gone from the campsite told Cher only one thing: Lauren had not walked away voluntarily. But while Lauren's mother began seeking answers, the group at Center Hill Lake carried on with their day. There were no emergency calls, there were no missing person reports filed. They just went about their days like nothing had happened. And then, late that afternoon, around 4:20 p.m., two fishermen, Lynn Blair and his son Dylan, were out on the lake when something in the water caught their eyes. What first appeared to be a piece of pink cloth soon became unmistakably human. Floating face down in a quiet cove, the body of a young woman bobbed in the gentle current. And it was Lauren Agee. The discovery sent shockwaves back to the campsite and beyond. For Lauren's family, it was the moment hope turns to heartbreak. For investigators, it was the moment a missing person case became a tragic death investigation. And for everyone who knew her, it raised new questions. How had she ended up here? Why was no one looking for her until this moment? This was not the way Sunday morning was supposed to begin. Not the way any parent imagines the start of a day. And yet here on the quiet waters of Center Hill Lake, Lauren's story took its most devastating turn. Lynn contacted authorities immediately, alerting the DeKalb County Sheriff's Department that there was a person in the water. Deputies, along with officers from the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency, responded to the call and made the grim confirmation. The body was that of 21-year-old Lauren Taylor Agee, a young woman who had been celebrating the weekend just hours before. According to Sheriff's Department reports, when first responders arrived, they observed that the body was floating in a quiet slough, a slight indentation in the shoreline behind the bluff where Lauren and her friends had been camping the night before. The location was still within sight of the larger Wakefest area, but oddly in a cove rather than directly below the campsite. As deputies prepared Lauren's body for transport, they were assisted by Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency officers using a boat. As the body was lifted from the water, some photographs taken at the scene showed what appeared to be a triangular imprint on her torso, a mark that later became a point of contention in discussions about how her body had been placed in the water and whether it matched the shape of equipment used in the response. At the scene, two of Lauren's friends, Aaron Lilly and Christopher Stout, were observed in a canoe nearby as law enforcement approached. They reportedly called out that their friend was missing before officers even reached the body, a detail recounted in depositions related to later legal proceedings. The discovery of her body was dispatched as an emergency, but in that moment, the lake that had been filled with laughter and music was marked by an eerie quiet. It was the first time the celebration of Wakefest collided with tragedy, and the stark reality of Lauren's death began to unfold before investigators. For her family, especially her mother, Cher Smith, the news was devastating. Within hours, the worry that had begun earlier that morning turned into certainty. Lauren was gone. And for authorities, this discovery marked the beginning of what would become a controversial and widely questioned investigation into the circumstances surrounding her death. Investigators from the DeKalb County Sheriff's Department arrived and conducted what they described as a brief investigation. Their conclusion was straightforward. Lauren had fallen off the cliff, suffered blunt force trauma, and possibly drowned. Toxicology revealed her blood alcohol level was more than twice the legal limit. And with no foul play clearly evident, the medical examiner ruled her death accidental. But the autopsy also held cryptic details. No water in her lungs, multiple injuries to her head, and wounds that some would later describe as not consistent with a simple fall. Lauren's mother, Sherry, was not satisfied. She knew her daughter, her energy, her strength, her cautious nature, and she refused to accept that simple explanation. Sherry hired private investigator Sheila Wasaki to dig deeper. What Sheila found alarmed her: a bite mark on Lauren's chest, peculiar bruising, and injuries that seemed more consistent with a struggle than an accidental fall. Sheila questioned whether Lauren was dead before she was placed in the water. Meanwhile, Sherry tried to understand why none of Lauren's friends immediately reported her missing and why they continued to stay at the lake and even posted about having a good weekend after her body was found. In December 2016, Sherry filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Hannah Palmer, Aaron Lilly, and Christopher Stout, seeking justice and answers. But the judge dismissed the case in March 2017, saying there was no evidence to prove foul play. Sherry appealed and fought on, but the legal system offered little in the way of closure. Years later, the question still remains: why was Lauren's body found so far from the campsite if she had fallen? Why was there no water in her lungs if drowning was the cause? Why were there injuries not easily explained by a fall? And why did her last night end without witnesses or explanation? Her death remains officially accidental, but Lauren's family and others continue to question whether the full truth has ever been unearthed.